Hey guys, this is Adam from the Rescue Michigan Coalition. Just want to make a short video today talking about the biggest lie in politics. It's something that comes up every election, and I just thought I'd make a video about it because I just saw a YouTuber I like to watch, Viva Fry, was interviewing Michaela Peterson. That's Jordan Peterson's daughter, and they were talking about Canadian politics. Viva Fry himself is running for Canadian Parliament as a member of the PPC, which is an up-and-coming political party that's the only major party. It's not even considered a major party in Canada, but the only party to speak of in Canada that's opposed to the lockdown orders. And they were talking about how lockdowns have been, destroying the country. And so Michaela Peterson says she and her father, Jordan Peterson, are going to be voting for the Conservative Party because it's the lesser of two evils. They don't like Justin Trudeau, et cetera, et cetera. And we've all heard this before. This is the biggest lie in politics, is that you have to accept the lesser of two evils. And the reason why most people would say, and in fact, Michaela Peterson brought it up, is the most popular argument against this is that you're still you're still condoning evil. And that's the popular argument against voting for the lesser of two evils. But it's one of at least four arguments against doing that. And in fact, it is the weakest. This is something I wrote about way back in 2009 or 2010, an article for Campaign for Liberty, and this was actually derived, really this material is coming from my political mentor, Mike Rothfeld, who runs the Foundation for Applied Conservative Leadership, and they teach this in all of their classes. But there are four important arguments as to why you should not vote for the lesser of two evils. The first, as I said, is if you're still voting for evil. The problem with that argument, and this came up in their discussion, is that it doesn't address the fundamental motivation why people do this, which is that you still want to minimize evil given the two candidates or more that you have to choose from. And of course, in Canada, they have multiple parties, but ultimately only one person becomes the Prime Minister of Canada, right? But there are other arguments that are much more important that have to be addressed. The first one is you don't get your policy goals by supporting those who vote against them. And that's just the way it's going to go. So in Ontario, where the Conservative Party, which in Canada, the Conservative Party is liberal, the Liberal Party is far left, and the NDP is Maoist. Canada's politics, the center in Canada's politics are way to the left. But if you're going to re-elect the Conservatives that support the lockdowns, you're going to get more lockdowns, period. The only way you ever get your policy is by refusing to vote for politicians that support it. So that's one important argument. The third argument, we've got two down so far. They're still evil. You don't get your agenda through if you vote for the politicians that that oppose your agenda. The third thing is it demoralizes our people to be told what they have to settle for. And this is why so many people are not more politically engaged. They feel the whole system is corrupt. The whole system can't be reasoned with, and because of that, this is why people tune out. This is why people don't vote, because they're just fed up with it. And part of the reason they're fed up is because every election cycle, politicians come around saying, you got to vote for me just to get rid of the other guy, because I'll be less bad than he is. It's demoralizing. But the most important argument that you have to make when people are using the lesser of two evils logic is it isn't true at all. And let me explain what I mean by that. The lesser of two evils can actually often be the greater evil. Just as an example, just as a prime example of this, think about George W. Bush versus Barack Obama. Both of them radically increased the size of government. Both of them radically carried out a globalist agenda. Both of them radically socialized medicine. For Bush, it was Medicaid Part D or Medicare Part D. For Obama, it was Obamacare. Not much was different between the two presidencies. But what was different is that during the Obama administration, the conservatives were able to mobilize against that. They were able to grow. Same thing is happening right now. With Joe Biden in office, the conservatives are absolutely, totally fired up. If Mitt Romney had been president, or if Jeb Bush had been president, you'd have basically the same agenda marching forward. And the Republicans, as a body, would be constantly making excuses for all the things that they were doing to expand government and destroy liberty, as was happening in the Bush administration. Now, I can understand maybe at the presidential level, some people will think, oh, I got to minimize this. But people make these arguments in local races and congressional races. I mean, think about if you're, let's say you're in the west side of Michigan and Fred Upton is your congressman. This is a traitor that voted to impeach Donald Trump on the basis of constitutionally protected speech that Congress just simply lied about and claimed that he had incited an insurrection. Absolutely disgusting nonsense. Fred Upton is your congressman. So what happens if you refuse to vote for Fred Upton, even though you are on the conservative side, you don't want there to be a Democrat politician in that office? What's going to happen in a couple of years? A different Republican might run to replace Fred Upton. But as long as he keeps getting reelected, he's the guy who represents that seat. And people will say, oh, what about the majority? It's only one seat out of hundreds. They can afford to lose a few for the traitors that voted to impeach Donald Trump. I mean, that's just the way it is. In a seat that tends to have a partisan swing one way or the other, that's normal. Or even in a more neutral district, like the 3rd Congressional District in Michigan. Same situation. You got Peter Meyer, another traitor that voted for impeachment. Might go to a Democrat. Well, Republicans will learn their lesson if they keep sending people to Washington on the Republican side that keep attacking Donald Trump, populist values, and everything else. This is how this kind of attitude is why the left is going further and further to the left, and why the Republican Party is going further and further to the left for their failure to uphold these kind of politics. As one example, in Los Angeles, there was a blue-collar district, and there was a congressman by the name of Marty Martinez. And he was, by and large, a pro-union Democrat, as they all generally are. And he voted against them on one or two minor things. They primaried him. And the unions ran the operation against him. He got defeated in the primary, replaced him with Hilda Solis, who went on to become Obama's labor secretary. And the quote from the labor unions was, Marty wasn't an anti-union guy. He wasn't even a mostly bad union guy. He was mostly good. But this is a blue-collar district, and we expect better. And this is the attitude that has purged the Democrat Party of any moderates that they have. That's the way that they operate. The Republican side does not have that same discipline. And when the election rolls around, what happens? Lindsey Graham gets reelected, goes on to vote to confirm all of Joe Biden's radical lunatic judges. If they got rid of him for one cycle, they'd get another Republican in who's better. That's the kind of attitude that you have to have. Now, if you're organizing as a political activist, part of the thing that you can do is choose your battles. You don't have to defend every rhino out there. Your time, your talent, your treasure are valuable. If you don't have a good candidate for Congress, work on a state house race, or work on the attorney general race, or work on any other race that's to your calling. If you don't like who the nominee is for governor, maybe you want to get involved in the Secretary of State race. There's all kinds of places to get involved in politics where you can work for and support actual champions of our values. But when you go out and you tell people what they must settle for, you're actually working against the freedom you claim to support. Because in the end, all you're doing is carrying water for the political establishment to make it easier and easier and easier for them to vote against your interests. The only way you're going to permanently end lockdowns in this country or in Canada is if voters absolutely refuse to vote for any candidate of either party that condones lockdowns. And the same logic applies to every other issue, whether it's mandatory vaccinations or gun rights or anything else. Whatever is your biggest issue. Now, not every candidate's perfect, but you have to decide what it is you'll settle for. And that's the real nature of politics, is that the way to get to your agenda is to support only the people that are the champions of your agenda and to attack everybody else, refuse to support anybody else. That's the way you ultimately win in the long run, is not by settling for anybody but Obama, anybody but Biden, anybody but Bush, that whole attitude. And in fact, we actually saw this play out in the last election. The Bernie Sanders people got absolutely folded in and got absolutely nothing that they wanted. The Washington establishment promised them the world if they would just support Joe Biden. Washington establishment gave them nothing. You get the same neoliberal policies they had under Obama, same neoliberal policies they had under Clinton. Now, contrast Bernie Sanders dropping out of the race with Ron Paul dropping out of the race. Ron Paul refused to endorse the Republican establishment's candidate. And what ended up happening? They lost those races, and then they nominated and elected Donald J. Trump. That's how it goes. So the next time someone tells you you must support the lesser of two evils, instead of saying, I'm not going to support the lesser of two evils because it's still evil, point out, number one, you're never going to get your agenda if you condone voting for the lesser of two evils. You're going to demoralize our movement supporting the lesser of two evils. At the end of the day, you're actually probably putting in someone who's going to do the same thing that you were opposing in the first place. And you'll just ultimately all you'll do is demoralize the movement that can build to oppose it. So if you want to end lockdowns in Canada or United States, anywhere, don't settle for the lesser of two evils. Vote for the candidates that are going to defend your values. They're going to restore liberty and nothing less. So that's all for today. Thanks again for all you guys do for liberty. Peace.